Just gonna try a little video here. I've never done a Zoom. And I've got one of my photographs in the background. It's a light ray coming in through some kind of a grate. I call it light base, because it has there's four strings there. So anyway, that's the background that I'm choosing. The video quality here is terrible, and I'll probably find some other way uh, to do a video that looks a little bit better. But I wanted to just try it, and I'm going to talk about creativity. The thing that I've realized over the years is that I don't differentiate between any of the domains, and they are constantly feeding off of one another. I'm primarily a musician, but as I think back to when I was 7 or 8 years old, the first thing I was doing as a creative person was visual art. So I was doing things that were very geometric. I was very, very interested in architecture, and in fact wanted to be an architect. And to this day, I still have a strong interest in architecture. And the next thing that I started to get into when I was about 10 or 11 was writing. I would just sit at the typewriter and write things that came to my mind. And then I wrote a play around the age of 11 or 12. That was, what was the title of that? I Shall Be Released. I Shall Be Released is a Dylan song, which was also covered by Bette Midler, I believe. But it wasn't, I think it was just an off the cuff title. And it's interesting because I still work that way these days. I'll start with a title on many things. I have a note that I've been keeping for years, and it's just got a list of titles. So whenever I get an idea for one, I put it in there. And then when I start a new project, I'll go in there and I'll find a working title, which sometimes is the final title. The titling thing came to me very early on, which is part of the creative process that I've been using since I was a child. And I think if you talk to any creative person, they've got vivid memories of their creative styles when they were growing up. So, your style of creativity that you developed in childhood is kind of the statue. It was the base on which the statue of your life sits, in my perspective. And I think you'd probably find that with other creative people as well. So the other day I was just looking on the internet because I had been kind of interested. I was curious about the paintings that Picasso did where a guitar was featured. And I discovered that there was many, many of them, at least 50 that I found that he did during the Cubist period, so 1910, about 1920. And I think even after that, the guitar and musical elements really came into the paintings quite frequently. I think one of his contemporaries was Ravel, so that could be an influence. So that led to making a new piece of music based on one of the pieces that he did, which was a cardboard maquette or a cardboard sculpture of a guitar. I think many of you have seen it. And if you haven't, just Google Picasso cardboard guitar and you'll see it. It's very interesting. But it started to make me think about making a piece of music. It wasn't intentional. I was just it was kind of in the moment. And I was looking at all those paintings and all, the musical elements with them. And I had picked up the guitar. And I started to play around with just minor chords, which has a very dark sound to it. And I followed down that creative path. And I started to work with it. I was actually notating it in software in Finale. writing out the actual notation. And then I had started to get ideas for doing a string part or including a string part in it. And so I started to score out the string quartet. And then I had changed the sound of the strings to a choir for some reason. And I just loved the sound of it. It was just came out of nowhere. It was just so mysterious and spooky. With all the minor chords, with this choir singing minor triads. It just was a great sound. And I said that I have to explore this. And I did. And I did several different demos of it. The first demo that I did after it didn't sound spooky at all because I had left out the choir. And it just sounded kind of Western. And then I put the choir back in, putting some other guitar parts on it, and I put a lap steel part on it as well, which gives it a Western twang to it, all the while having that choir sound in there with a lot of reverb. So after I was done with it, I started to use the metaphor of the spaghetti Western and the Morricone sound. I started to go down that path. And so the other day I thought I'd try out doing a music video with those metaphors. And so I went out on the internet and I found on archive.org, I had found a police procedural film, a film noir film from the mid-50s, which I think might have even been the pilot for the Dragnet series. I'm not sure. The name of the film is Midnight Dragnet. I don't remember who is in it. But as I was watching that, I said, this fits perfectly. I'm looking for things that are in the desert, Mojave Desert, which is where it was shot. And some of the scenes were shot in Salton Sea, which some of you know is a former tourist destination in the 40s and the 50s. And now I think it's completely dried up. I've never been there, but I don't think it exists anymore. It's a place, obviously, but people like to go there because it's spooky. And so that's the kind of sound I was looking for, or the look I was looking for, I'm sorry. So the look went with the sound that I already had. And so I'll put a link in the description and you can watch it. It's interesting how I cut it, because what I realized after it was done, what I had cut were all the cliche elements that go into films, like the car chase scene, the love scene, the gun standoff, violence, tension of some kind. And that's all I included. That's all it is. And I think it's kind of funny. The piece of music is only 90 seconds long, so the film is only 90 seconds long and has all the usual elements of a cliche film. At some point in the process, I had changed the working title, which was Maquette, and I changed it to In the End. And subconsciously, I think my putting the end in the beginning and the end at the end was kind of a confluence of ideas. It wasn't intentional. I just realized that's kind of interesting that I picked up on that subconsciously. But I didn't change the name of the piece to In the End after I did that. So it's kind of interesting how creativity works in those mysterious ways. So, the point is, you can start anywhere. If you're working on a story, you hear something in your head, it's nice to have an instrument around. Just pluck it out, try to write it down. If you need to collaborate, find people that can do that for you. David Lynch is also interested in music. He's not really a musician. He works with mostly Angelo Badalamenti as his musical collaborator, which allows him to have someone flesh out the sonic aspects of what he's seeing visually. And he can't do that himself, or maybe he could. It's not beyond him. I think he's just one of the most interesting creative people ever. I see him as definitely as a role model. And I don't think Lynch, as being a boomer, is not unlike any other boomers in terms of being able to independently work on ideas without having to have approval or have someone say this is good or not good. You just do it and work with it. And then you realize when you think it's done, it's not done. You know, it's with this in the end piece, it's just the beginning.